So the idea of a pause button in Elden Ring is getting a lot of attention. If you did not see the video I posted earlier on, Alanah Pearce has gotten a bit of heat because she posted something called Elden Ring is too hard, and in parentheses it said it is not. And in that she talked about something called situational disabilities, in which she talked about if you had a kid and you had no pause button in the game, sort of like what Elden Ring lacks, then that is called a disability. Now, she got some pushback from a good bit of people, including 8-Bit Eric, Varrock Dark, and Erik Kain. And we'll get to Erik Kain in just a second because he seems to be the one that went a little bit further in terms of the position there. Because though some of the others were only talking about her definition and her terminology, Erik Kain seemed to want to talk about the pause button in a more fundamental aspect when it came to Elden Ring. For a bit of an update, Alanah Pearce later posted a new video called Let Me Explain, in which she talked about why she called that a disability, where in programming terms, the term disability also proclaims as something that is disabled for a little bit of time, such as Bluetooth connectivity, or when something is temporarily turned off, or something of that nature. That may have cleared some things up into what her position is, and she later specified that she was not advocating for anything in particular, that she was only trying to paint a picture in which game developers actually define things as. Remember, she is a developer at Sony Santa Monica. However, either intentionally or not, she has sparked a bit of a debate about whether or not Elden Ring does need a pause button. As you may know, Elden Ring is a game in which, while it is in the Souls series, is not technically in the same manner of Souls games, in which you don't necessarily need to play with the multiplayer aspect turned on. In the past, Dark Souls and Demon Souls games had it to where a invasion mechanic was always on, and somebody from another game could then come into your world and wreak havoc on your world. And there was no way in order to disable it. It was essentially part of the game. In Elden Ring, it seems to be a little bit different, in which it's not a particularly dominant mechanic of the game, in which you don't have to be included within that. Though while I had said that most people were taken aback by her terminology and was just talking about that and how she was getting burned from that, and she later clarified this, and there's really no indication of whether or not those people who created videos about her initial video are now reacting to her clarification on the Let Me Explain video. However, it is Erik Kain that is taking a bit of a different take and saying that a pause button would effectively ruin the experience, because part of the Souls experience is not being able to do just that. Now, before I go any further, let me explain that yes, I do agree with Erik Kain most of the time. However, we do live in a world anymore in which if you even have one disagreement with somebody, when you have 99% of the time agreed with a person, you risk that person blocking you on Twitter, blocking you on social media, hating you for all time. We have come to that point in the timeline, and it is getting absolutely ridiculous that we have to walk on eggshells around everybody at every moment, which even the littlest things which you can't take at any seriously is taken with the utmost seriousness. Regardless of what you think of this process, it is just a video game. It is just something that you play in your free time. It is not real life. We will live if we have a disagreement on this subject. It is not like any real life wars that are going on in the world right now. It is not like you not getting your pension at the end of the month or your paycheck at the end of the pay period. It is not that serious. So why are we taking it like that? Why are we using vocal language? Why are we using F-bombs whenever someone doesn't agree with us on this simple subject? And why is this the hill that both sides have to die upon? I do not understand why every single subject has to be ultra serious and risk us losing friendships over something as simple as this, especially when there's already a functionality, albeit cumbersome to get there, within the game. There have been several people who have told us how to actively do it. What people are actually advocating for here is a macro, because even though I'm not versed in video game programming logic and all of that, I can hopefully explain what a macro is. It's pushing one button to make a series of things happen, and when you press a button, usually they'll call upon different types of code or stuff like that that will tell the game game to perform a specific function. And pause would be one of those functions in which you tell the game, hey, halt everything else until the button is pressed again, until these codes are called upon again to reverse what it originally did. And in this sense, there are ways in order to pause the game, as has been told by several people. There is also a mod that you can insert into the game in order to create a pause button. As of right now, From Software is not telling you you can't do that. Thus, if they really wanted to make this a part of the Souls experience, if they really wanted you to not be able to pause, they would go out of their way to make sure that these types of things were patched out of the game. Right now, it seems that the opposite is true. From Software did no attempt to patch this backwards way of pausing the game out of the game. So in that sense, I don't think it would be that bad to allow a player to effectively just use a button to pause the game as opposed to doing a more cumbersome series of events to do that. Now, the biggest thing here is if someone were to have that feature and to want to use it and does use it, does that hinder your experience of the game? Does that hinder how you play the game? And should you force how you play the game on anybody else? Yes, the option would be there. That doesn't mean you have to use it. That doesn't mean you have to use any of the features that are present within the game. People do low-level runs. People do no-save runs. People do whole types of different challenges that they impose upon themselves. That doesn't mean anybody else has to partake in those challenges. If they're trophy hunting, then they can go ahead and try some of the higher difficulties, or they can try some of the different challenges or the post-game challenges or what have you. That doesn't mean the person that's next door has to do the same thing. They can choose to play casually and they can choose to take their time while the person sitting next to them wants to speed run through the game. And that's their prerogative. That's their right. They don't have to do or to play the game the way you play the game. The fear here is not whether or not it detracts from the Souls experience, is whether or not it would effectively dumb down the game. That if you cater to those people who want a pause feature, then it could effectively become a slippery slope. If you allow this feature, then maybe you'll allow this other feature that makes it even easier, and then you dumb down the difficulty across the board, effectively becoming an quote-unquote easy mode, which Alanah Pearce has specifically and unequivocally said that she was not clamoring for. And until someone actively says, hey, this was what you were aiming to do, then you cannot say that a pause feature is the same as adding in an easy mode. And yes, we have called out Jim Stephanie Sterling saying that they did want something like that, whether or not they were joking or whether or not they were being serious. And I do not think that a pause feature or a pause button would effectively make the game easier, or it would be a slippery slope for other people to then come in and say, I want this or I want that. Because here's the other thing about difficulty. First of all, difficulty is subjective. What you may think is ultra hard, some people think is untimely easy. However, one thing about difficulty is that it needs to be organic. It needs to test your skill. What you've learned so far with your skills and your abilities and your tactics throughout the game. To learn the boss's mechanics, to learn how to beat a boss or progress within the story, or to do whatever puzzles that the game calls upon you to do. So I want to ask, what does not having a pause button do to challenge you? What does not having a pause button when the feature is present within the game and From Software did nothing in order to patch it out, teach someone how to beat a boss or to get through a puzzle or what have you? If your answer is it does nothing to change or to further someone's ability in order to play the game, then why are you imposing that on other people? Why are you telling them that they have to play the way you want them to play it? If you are really wanting them to play the way you want them to play it, then you would go to Nexus Mods and tell them to take that particular mod down, or From Somewhere to patch what is able to pause the game without having to exit the main menu out of the game. But as you can see, From Somewhere is not doing that. Maybe it was just an oversight. Maybe they didn't think to add it. Or, and this is a possibility too, maybe the reason they didn't add it is because of what we are now seeing. Though I may or may not agree with it, some people describe the Dark Souls community as probably one of the most toxic communities on the internet. Failure to help anybody else out when they ask for help with a particular boss, just saying get good, even when the get good is made with good intentions, can make some people feel as though they are not welcome within that community, that they are not going to get the help, and they're not going to be told that they are good players, that if you want to be considered an actual game gamer, you need to do it the way that we wanted you to do it. Perhaps that's why they didn't want to add a pause feature. They knew they would get the heat, so why bother adding something and then get the backlash from it? And we've seen how toxic these types of issues, as simple as this, make people. You have seen how heated this simple discussion, something about a pause button, is making people. Imagine if this company actually added one. It would be bedlam in the highest form. So why would they want to subject themselves to that? But also, to what Alanah mentioned in the Let Me Explain video, this could be Bandai Namco's decision, not From Software, to not add the button. The reason why is because they want engagement. If you press a pause button and go away for a little while, you're risking not coming back to the game for a little while, to where your PS5 or Xbox power saving feature kicks in and turns off the system for you because you have been away from the controller for a while. That, to Bandai Namco, is loss of revenue and loss of engagement. Maybe you thought the game was not good enough for you to come back to, or maybe you got distracted, or perhaps you thought that another game deserved more of your attention. That would be loss of engagement and, in a sense, a loss of revenue. So maybe this was a more corporate decision than anything else. And some of the Souls players are talking about making sacrifices, I remember playing WoW and saying that some of these people want to take away things like flying mounts or meeting stones or teleportation methods or what have you. This is not helping somebody learn how to play the game. And by take away flying mounts, we're not talking about the way Final Fantasy XIV does it. We have to attune to ether currents in order to have your ability to fly given to you. Taking it out altogether so no player has it ever in any capacity. That does not help somebody learn how to traverse through a zone. That is, a sense, forcing the way you play the game onto other people. And that is taking away the fun out of the game. And that's what games should be. They should be fun. They should be immersive. They should be taking your attention away from whatever bothers you, whatever annoys you, to get your mind off the troubles of the world. That's why we're saying that some games should, quote unquote, take politics out of the game. We're not saying that we don't care about politics or that games can't have a political undertone in their stories. But when you're trying to shoehorn your own opinions and those opinions take over the plot, then we run into problems and it no longer becomes immersive and no longer becomes escapism. In a sense, you can call a pause button a quality of life feature. And by that, I mean things that doesn't exactly change the gameplay of the game or the intended functionality of the game, while at the same time providing convenience for the player, such as fast travel or taking away inventory bloat or something along those lines. Or in this sense, maybe flying mounts, as I said. After you learn the lay of the land in the zone and you have attuned yourself to those currents in FF14, you have the privilege to fly in those zones. I think that's a great compromise. Learn how to use the zones, learn how to traverse through the zones, and then you're free to finally fly across the zone as you see fit. And in a situation like this, where From Software definitely had the intention to give you some form of pause feature, some way to pause the game, maybe just the macro of it, maybe just providing a button that automates that process, can be a quality of life feature. It doesn't hinder the difficulty, it doesn't change the difficulty of the game. And I wonder how it would take away from the Souls experience. How does that fundamentally change the game if the developers seemingly kind of wanted you to have some way to do that? So yeah, you can probably say that From Software is not officially supporting it as of yet. However, this whole debate is getting hyped up a little bit because of Alanah's video, and I think her video kind of scared some people into thinking that From Software might see it and might think to add it, but it's already been added in the form of mods in some backwards way, which doesn't include going back to the main menu or dying. And unless you are a complete hardcore gamer and want those to be taken away from other players, then I don't see a reason why it shouldn't be added in an official capacity. Because if Souls players believe in the idea of sacrifice, that these games are meant to teach about taking sacrifices, what sacrifice are they making? What sacrifice are the hardcore Souls players giving in this scenario? I think they can give the other players just one thing and not have it be a slippery slope. It's already in the game. People have modded the game to add it in. And yes, I would install the mod, even though it's from Nexus Mods and we know what kind of dumps of fire they have become lately. It doesn't take away or hinder anybody else's enjoyment of the game. So yeah, this is just adding a macro to the game. I don't understand the huge battle about this. It's showing just how close to the chest people are taking a game such as this. It's not that serious. serious. Maybe it's time that From Software takes that sacrifice and adds the pause button to the game in an official sense. I agree with Erik Kain any other time, but on this one thing, I have to disagree with him on this one simple thing. Until next time, as always, to be continued.